consequence is ours, well, duty is ours, consequence belongs to God. We've got to do the right thing here regardless. But for those that don't know, briefly explain to them what this hate bill does. It expands a federal thought crimes division, a commissariat.
Absolutely. Just look up to Canada, where they've lost free speech as a result of this kind of legislation, which was introduced by the ADL, Anti-Defamation League, back in 1970. That's what's coming for America. I'll just give you a brief resume of the amendments to the Constitution it destroys. It destroys the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which says the government can't give special protections, rights, and services to special groups above others. This bill elevates homosexuals, Jews, Latinos, Muslims 3 times higher than the rest of the population, tripling penalties for anybody who commits a hate crime against them. It also destroys the 10th Amendment to the Constitution by unifying federal law enforcement with local law enforcement. It's called the Local Law Enforcement Hate Crimes Prevention Act. That means it's an attempt to unify in a seamless chain of command the federal policing powers with local policing powers against violent hate crimes. Now, that's the very definition of a police state, when you have no checks and balances on federal policing powers. And then thirdly, it will destroy the First Amendment of the Constitution. The 1968 law on which this is based says in Title 18, Section 2A, that if anybody's speech induces or incites somebody else, even on the airwaves 2,000 miles away, to commit some kind of a violent hate crime, and that perpetrator of the hate crime says he was influenced by Alex Jones or Reverend so-and-so or whatever, then Alex Jones and that pastor are going to have to stand in federal court as having been guilty of inciting a violent hate crime. Now, it is true that as a result of a great deal of protest that we brought in back in July, the Brownback Amendment was reluctantly added by the Democrats, saying that a pastor, a talk show host, a publisher, whatever, cannot be directly indicted for the general effect of his speech. He has to immediately incite some kind of violent act. On the other hand, the whole momentum of this legislation is to create a bias-oriented justice system in America, which will lay down indictments, and then these cases will go to judges all the way up the ladder.
Do a final segment, Reverend Pike. We got a break. It sets up the federalization of police and builds the grid and sets up the political police. Now they've openly announced world government police run by the Justice Department, and they're going to track you down for your speech. That's in the New York Times.
Everything we said came true. Everything we've done has been right.
All right, we've got a few minutes left with Reverend Ted Pike, truthtellers.org. I'm Alex Jones with Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. Reverend, you were going over some of the things that it does. Then we got the cyberbullying on top of it. I mean, this really is the fall of the Republic.
Alex, in the last several weeks, we pretty much knocked the cyberbullying bill in the head. A lot of people called in, and we got the Republicans active. They brought in excellent constitutional witnesses in that Judiciary Crime Subcommittee hearing, and we routed them. And, in fact, the big media in the United States, including the New York Times, the Popular Science Online, and so on, was ridiculing the cyberbullying bill. I tell you that to encourage people that when we take action and really scream bloody murder about these bills, we can hold the liberals, ADL, and so on, homosexual lobby back in Congress. That's exactly what we've got to do right now. We literally have hours before this awful federal hate crimes bill could be brought before the president. We need to send off those emails to whitehouse.gov. Come to Truth Tellers. We've got it all laid out there on our action page, exactly what you're supposed to say. Get those off. It'll only take you 10 minutes, 5 minutes, in fact, to do more than you could possibly imagine right now, I believe, to encourage the president to stand by his harsh promise he made to Democrats that if they're going to add $100 billion more pork on that arms bill, he's going to veto it. Let's stand behind him. Let's stand behind Obama and let him know that the American people number one, they're not going to stand for him to sign this bill into law. We're going to take revenge next year with midterms if he does sign it in. Number two, he has to stand up behind his promise repeatedly made this spring that he will not load down the American people with another $100 billion for unnecessary, wasteful F-35 engines.
Well, Ted Pike, the problem is he always does the opposite of what he says he'll do, but let's pray we can put pressure on him this time, because this is a First Amendment killer. Ted Pike, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Alex.
There he goes, ladies and gentlemen.